Yo. Let me try that again. Yo, what's good with y'all, man? It's Servo Hoops, and today we want to be talking about some hoops, man. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down some of the potential MVP candidates for this upcoming 2023 season. And some of these names are going to be some familiar faces that we have seen brought up in the past couple of seasons, but I don't give a fuck. They're still great players. And we're going to throw in some dark horses that some people may or may not agree with or disagree with. But before we get into that, I am going to mention the honorable mentions before we get into the official finalists for who I have predicted for this 2023 MVP race this coming season. And I do got to say Giannis and Jokic are going to be excluded out of this finalist list, because although I do predict them to continue having great seasons, especially with Jokic, he potentially playing with a more healthier roster this upcoming season with Murray and Porter coming back, and alongside the valuable pickups they made in free agency this past all season, I do assume that the Nuggets will finish with a better record finishing the regular season, and that Jokic will continue to play at the same level of production. Maybe he'll average a bit less points, but I still see him putting up MVP-like numbers. But due to voters fatigue being the downfall for both of their cases, I can just see it being very difficult for both of them to win. Even though Giannis is a bit removed from the last time he won his MVP, again, we know how NBA media goes now. Him and Jokic are both recent back-to-back MVPs. I think it is very apparent that NBA media has shown a favoritism to American basketball players, especially with Jokic and Giannis taking over the league the way they have, and the lack of media coverage that they have gotten with their greatness. They don't get the same level of hype or attention towards the history-breaking things they've done within the past 5 years, as opposed to like a LeBron or Stephen Curry. Although Giannis is starting to get a bit more recognition for being known as one of the best players in the league. Of course, that conversation is up to debate who you would really give that #1 spot to. As for other honorable mentions, like let's say LeBron or KD, we could at least chalk those two up to at least miss 15 to 20 games this year due to some health concerns or just some aging, resting issues. Some dark horse names in there. I believe Trae Young will ascend himself in that conversation this year, to be honest with you, with the improvements they've made to Atlanta. Players like Devin Booker, Zion Williamson, Damian Lillard can come back next season and just go on a revenge tour. I doubt Portland will really finish with a high enough seeding for him to really be a serious mention in the conversation. Even a player like Stephen Curry could fuck around and put himself in the conversation. We know how much of a golden boy Curry is in today's media. Of course, not to deny that any of those players are great players, but I do believe that we're entering an era in the NBA where some of our favorite faces from the 2010s are starting to meet their match with some of the rising talent in these young stars becoming some of the household names in basketball today, where a lot of the younger players are really just becoming better. Of course, that's the evolution of basketball, but we're living in it. We're witnessing it. A lot of the older players that we've probably seen 5 to 6 years ago, like a Westbrook or a James Harden, players who were MVP candidates years ago, younger players are coming up and becoming better than them. So we can start to see some new faces in that MVP conversation. With that being said, before we get into this final list for predictions, if you're new to the channel, stop acting brand new, subscribe, man. We get litty in this section. And if you ain't brand new, welcome back. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. And all right, let's just start chatting and get to the list now. All right, first up on the list, we got Luka Doncic. And if you haven't watched one of my previous videos, I had mentioned amongst the names of contenders in the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks. And I stand on that wholeheartedly. We're talking about a team that literally made the conference finals last year. And whether you want to contribute it towards injury asterisk and shit like that, which happens every year, look, bro, Luka is a playoff menace. Every single year he's made it past in the postseason, he's put up buckets. Don't get me wrong, this team can definitely use some more talent, and you can't win in the postseason with a one-man army. But aside from that, though, not only has Dallas made the playoffs in the previous 2 seasons, given the talent that he's had, but this man has put up incredible numbers that we haven't seen from a 20 to 21-year-old in decades. Yeah, I do believe that this season coming up will be the first season we see Luka officially average a triple-double. And not that the MVP race is all about numbers and stats, but we can't deny Luka's inevitable ability to make his teammates better as well. And it plays such a pivotal part in the Mavericks offense throughout the regular season. Him being one of the best passers in the league at setting up his teammates coming out of the pick and roll, and also being an exceptional rebounder at his position, Luka, with his size and his skill set, is able to play the 1 to 3 position, his only deficiency being on the defensive end. But with the hire Jason Kidd, they definitely did make improvements on that end of the ball. And while man-to-man coverages might be a different story for a different day, to say the least, Luka's an average defender when thrown into a good team defensive system. Now, we've known in years prior that he's come close to it, but this upcoming season, with him going into his 5th season, I believe, do see him actually averaging officially a triple-double, and if not a shade lower. Maybe he averages like 10 rebounds, 9 assists, or vice versa. Now, they did lose an integral piece of their offense, which was Jalen Brunson, but I do believe that Spencer Dinwiddie will be able to contribute more on the offensive end with that factor being lost. On top of that, they do have Tim Hardaway coming back next season, and they did newly acquire Christian Wood. They also have defensive pieces in Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith, who is the perfect 3-and-D players for this roster, and recently have signed JaVale McGee to a 3-year contract, giving them some extra layer of rim protection around the rim and a lob threat for Luka around the basket. And even though Luka is young and has had some minor injuries in previous seasons, I do believe that he's made his stamp in this league as being a very underrated, durable superstar. Players like him, Giannis, and Jokic are very integral centerpieces for their rosters, and not only carry a heavy load on the offensive end when they are playing, but they know that their presence when they are off the court also play a heavy impact on the success of their franchise throughout the regular season. And I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but they do their best to remain healthy is to do so. Unlike some people. I didn't want to say nothing. Even though the numbers do play a factor in the MVP race, we all know that narratives have become a bigger and bigger contributing factor in that conversation. And I do see Luka having like a Russell Westbrook-esque type of season where, yeah, he might not be the number 1-2 seed in the Western Conference, but I could still see his numbers being valued more than his team's success in the MVP voting. Especially with Luka being the poster boy of all younger players in the league, having such an exceptional start to his career, being a very popular prediction for one of the best younger players to make that next level leap into MVP conversations in the coming season. To be honest with you, I think the Mavericks are even better than that OKC roster. I can see them finishing around a 3rd or 4th seed and also having one of the better defenses in the league. Not to mention that in this previous offseason, while Luka has been playing in the Euro League, it has been multiple sources showing pictures of him losing weight. We have seen a new variation of the skinny Luka in effect. We all know that regardless, Luka likes to play at his own pace and never been one to rely on his athleticism. But God forbid this transformation literally has any impact in his style of play, whether it's his transition offense, his durability during games, stamina-wise, or even a quicker step off the dribble. God bless America, man. Next up, we got the man who is compared to MVP Prime Rose the most himself, Ja Morant in the flesh. Now, after last season with the Memphis Grizzlies ending with the record that landed them with the 2nd spot in the Western Conference and losing in the 2nd round of the Western Conference playoffs to the reigning champions, of course, right now with Golden State, Memphis Grizzlies actually really show that they're going to be some serious competitors, not only in the West, but in the league in general for years to come. And Ja Morant is the storm that comes along with that, with him showing improvements on his outside jumper and also just showing a higher level of the IQ that he displays on the basketball court in this past season. Going into his 3rd season, Morant has shown a significant improvement in using his athleticism to not only create shots for his teammates, but even being more craftier at finishing around the rim. He's developed a nice little floater game around that area to avoid always using his athleticism and trying to rise up over defenders. And he's also just gotten better at breaking down and slicing through defenses within the half court. Already know from most of his jaw-dropping highlights that Ja Morant is a menace in transition.
And for Ja, with a full head of steam. Ja to the basket. Throws it down.
But I do believe that in this year specifically, we've seen him be a lot more decisive within the half court. Whether it's him gaining more confidence in his jump shots to sagging defenders or coming off of screens, or whether it's him using his paint gravity to set up shots for his perimeter shooters, it's been ridiculous to watch. And he is easily one of the most entertaining players to watch when he is on the court. But I will say one of his few downfalls in this voting might be, as great as his highlights are, Ja does play with a very high level of physicality, especially with the frequency in which he attacks the rim, with his aggressiveness, of course, as well. And with a frame that he has, it is a logical reason to raise some concern for some injury cases in the near future. And of course, we're all hoping that doesn't happen and he can remain as healthy as possible, but especially after this previous postseason where he did deal with some lower body injuries. But for this MVP campaign, it's crucial for him to play at least like 60 to 65 games. And I know we just passed Luka, and Luka isn't the greatest defender either, but at least in Ja Morant's case, Memphis is definitely a top 5 defense when he's not on the floor. And the numbers will show when he is on the floor that they fall to a mid-tier defense when he's out there. Now, it's not to say that Morant can't improve on that side of the floor, and I'm not sitting up here saying that he'll become the next Marcus Smart or anything, given his size and the role he obviously carries on offense for this team as well. But given his athleticism alongside his speed and wiry frame, I do believe that Ja possesses the physical tools to be at least an average perimeter defender against certain guards and to be able to fight through screens and provide some type of weak side coverage. He's hunted in mismatches on the opposing end when it comes to them going against teams. And despite that, he still puts up great numbers in the regular season. I know a lot of people allude to the fact that they are a good team without him, as they had a 20-5 record when he was out this previous season. And they gave Golden State a run for their money in this year's previous postseason. But let's be honest, Memphis without Ja Morant makes them probably like a playoff to play-in contending team in the Western Conference. And with them, he makes them a serious playoff threat against any team in the league. Even though Golden State beat them fair and square in 6 games, it was definitely not a dog walk for the reigning champs. And outside of games 3 and 5, every game in that series was highly competitive. Memphis definitely put up a good fight. I would go as far as saying that the only thing stopping Ja Morant from being a consensus best point guard in the league right now is the lack of a consistent jump shot and the lack of defensive consistency. Nonetheless, I can see a healthy Ja Morant this upcoming season averaging about at least 20 points and 10 assists. Also boldly predict that he'll be top 3 in assists per game by the time the season is over. With that being said though, regardless of whether Ja Morant makes that next level jump in his perimeter shooting, I still believe that he will be a strong consideration in this season's MVP voting, especially if Memphis Grizzlies have anything close to the regular season that they had last year. We got Jayson Tatum of the Boston Celtics, and when I say this is probably one of my favorites going into, I mean, honestly, everybody on this list is my favorites. We don't really fucking know who's going to win this MVP award. That being said, though, Tatum has definitely been under some heavy scrutiny after his most recent finals performance. And the criticism that he's been receiving has been very split hairs, you know, especially after his last interview where he was talking about his shoulders being fucked up and some fans just saying that this might be just an excuse. Everyone in the playoffs be injured, bro, and I don't have to reiterate that point. But again, when it comes to his criticisms, it's like 50-50 scale, where it's like one side of the spectrum views it as just that, like, you know, he is young. Obviously, he's in his prime years right now with 10 to 15 years to go in the league, hopefully. And, you know, it's his first finals. There's going to come with some hiccups, you feel me? And then you got the other side of the spectrum of people who are just like, nah, man, even though this dude is 22, 23 years old and just finished his first finals, he still had the most playoff turnovers of all time, and he was super inconsistent offensively. And this is just going to be a representation and indicator of how he is in high leverage moments. And regardless of whether the shoulder thing was a significant factor in how poorly he played in certain games, he did really show an improvement on the playmaking end of the floor for them. And he's just gotten overall better as a shot creator for this Boston Celtics offense. Ever since they've made him a primary option since Kyrie has left, he has stepped up to the plate and has hit the ceiling that we all expected of him when he's gotten drafted into this league. After the All-Star break this previous regular season, the man's went from averaging 25 points in the beginning half of the season to averaging 30 points on 50% shooting from the field and 41% from 3 on 7 attempts a game. Now, one thing you can say about Tatum is that he can do a better job at finishing with contact and just getting more free throws, but even as is, bro, I mean, the dude as a volume scorer is amazing. All of those 20 games played, not only did the Celtics turn around their entire season, but this man only had one game in that stretch of games where he had less than 20 points. And then in that one game against Chicago, he damn near had a triple-double. Now, if Tatum can continue to make significant strides in just that playmaking aspect of his game, especially when it wasn't expected of him. I mean, I've never really taken him to be a LeBron-esque player in terms of when it comes to passing IQ and such, and I don't expect him to be. But if he can bump up that assist average and keep the turnovers at a lower rate for this season coming up, to where he's averaging about 6 or 7 assists and still being that primary scoring option for them as well, especially with defenses guarding him differently now with his name being solidified, him making first-team All-NBA, and just being a top 20 player in the league right now. And even into this season coming forward, man, they are some serious contenders, and I do expect them to be one of the better Eastern Conference teams, so I don't even really worry about whether the record will play a factor in his MVP voting. Being that Tatum is already one of the better two-way players in today's league, I don't really worry about his effort on the defensive side of the floor really waning his votes. But with that being said, man, he just has the perfect build and game to really suit the conversation. And again, man, if he really can go to averaging of almost 30 points and about 7 rebounds, 7 assists, it's hard for me to see him not be in that conversation and probably end up winning the award. For the final prediction, we got Mr. Trust the Process himself, Joel Embiid. Of course, all of these guys that I named can be potential favorites to win it, but being that Embiid has been a runner-up candidate for the previous 2 seasons, following up Jokic, and Giannis putting up similar production stats as well, I do believe that this season, if anything, the voters' fatigue will kick in for both Giannis and Jokic, leaving a very open opportunity for Embiid to go in and take it. And assuming that Harden also is relatively healthy throughout the season as well, same for Embiid and just the core pieces on that Sixers roster, the improvements we've seen from Maxey as an overall scorer, and Tobias Harris being an all-star level player as a 4th option. Also making some very valuable pickups during the offseason, acquiring DeAnthony Melton and PJ Tucker. Not only will this help them with their defensive versatility, but on the offensive side of things, will provide Embiid with 2 above-average perimeter shooters whenever he has to deal with inevitable double team. To mention, with the handful of responsibilities that Embiid had to carry on the offensive end for the Sixers this previous season, not only did he display a new heightened awareness on the floor with his playmaking abilities, but he's also even shown to make better reads when he does get double teamed. I do believe this is the best suited roster that Embiid has had built around him since the Jimmy Butler era. But the main question when it comes to Embiid has always been his health, whether it's in the regular season or in the postseason. Another man is one of the most skilled players in the league and more than capable enough of having an MVP-like season once again. What's always kept him out of winning the award has been his health, and why Jokic has beat him the previous 2 times. I mean, his untimely injuries has even affected them in the playoffs. As every postseason he's been in, he's probably played with at least 1 severe injury in every one. And it's caused them to be eliminated from the playoffs sooner than they'd hoped. We do know that he's just coming off of a season of winning a scoring title, and I don't see his production waning any less, again, if he's healthy. But I don't really need to go too much in depth with how Embiid can win MVP this year. He had the Sixers as a top 3 seed in the East before Harden got traded there. That this man has just continued to get better and has even shown an ability to improve his shot creation and ball handling abilities, carrying some point guard duties last season for the Sixers or any role they needed. Recently, with the heavy load he's had to carry on the offensive end for the Sixers, he does take some plays off on the defensive end, whether it be ball watching or he doesn't contest at the rim at times. But when he is giving his full effort, he is one of the better two-way players in the league, so I don't think that he is a liability on either end. The Sixers are one of the better defensive teams in the league consistently, even after losing Ben Simmons. Unless Jokic averages 40 and the Nuggets are the best team in the league, I don't think he'll be taking on Embiid in this year's campaign. That being said, if you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like down below. And if you're new, what you doing, man? Stop acting brand new. And if you ain't new, welcome back, man. It's Yooooooo Hoops. We've been talking about some hoops, man. And I'll see y'all, man. Y'all be easy.